Hi, this is Kris Peters for the Hampton History Museum, and today we're going to explore how piracy has become such a big part of our popular culture. And of course, film plays a big role in this. From Errol Flynn to Kermit the Frog to Johnny Depp, pirate movies have become blockbusters the world over. But before pirates were popular in film, they were also the subject of many books. In 1882, Robert Louis Stevenson published Treasure Island, one of the most beloved pirate stories of all time. And long before that, during the golden age of piracy itself, another book was published. Now, piracy has been around forever, so what is the golden age of piracy? Well, nobody can really agree on that. Dates range everywhere from the 1560s, when Elizabethan privateers like Francis Drake were capturing Spanish treasure galleons in the Caribbean, to 1815, when the Barbary Wars between the U.S. and the Barbary states of North Africa came to an end. Most of the time, when historians refer to the golden age of piracy, they're talking about the time period from about 1680 to 1730. It's only about 50 years, but this is when most of the more famous pirates that we're familiar with were ravaging shipping lanes around the world. Now, in 1724, a book was published in England called, and this is the full title, A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. Catchy. Now, despite the long title of the book, it was insanely popular at the time. And when the first edition came out in 1724, it included illustrations of some of the pirates within its pages. Just 2 years later, in 1726, the second edition came out with new illustrations. And 10 years later, in 1736, the third edition debuted with new illustrations once again. So in a span of just 12 years, we see 3 editions of the book with new illustrations each time being sold in bookstores all over Britain and the American colonies. A General History of the Pirates, which is how I'll refer to it from now on, was the first major literary work in the pirate genre, and really marks the beginning of popular interest in piracy. It also shows how fascinated people were with the exploits of pirates at the time that they were happening. There have been dozens of plays, poems, short stories, and novels written about pirates since 1719. Some of the authors include the gentleman Daniel Defoe, Edgar Allan Poe, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, J.M. Barrie, Michael Crichton, the guy that wrote Jurassic Park, and of course Robert Louis Stevenson. There's even a comic opera called The Pirates of Penzance, which debuted in 1879 to the delight of audiences in New York and London. Now, the first pirate film was produced in 1908, when film was still silent. And in the 20th century, piracy has become a major theme in film, cartoons, comics, and eventually video games. Piracy has permeated every part of our popular culture, and today our understanding of pirates is more fiction than fact. But pirates were real, and they had a real effect on the lives, politics, and economies of Europe and colonial America. So when did piracy cross from fact to fiction? Well, A General History of the Pirates was published in 1724. It's an important historic document, but it's also problematic for historians because it folds a lot of myth and legend in with the history. With each edition of the book, the descriptions and illustrations of the pirates get more fanciful and sometimes even outlandish. So let's take a look at the 2 images I have on the table. The first one is the picture of Blackbeard from the 1724 edition of A General History of the Pirates. It shows a man dressed in the typical fashion of the day, holding a hunting sword like the one on the table, and wearing a cartridge box with 6 pistols attached to the strap. There are really only a few things out of place in this image. He's wearing the cartridge box in an unusual way, and it has pistols strapped to it, something that we've never been able to document outside of this book. He's got a big bushy beard, which is very unfashionable for the time, and he has slow match hanging out from under his hat. While these features mark him as odd at the beginning of the 18th century, he's really not that unusual. Now for the other one. This is the picture of Blackbeard from the 1736 edition of A General History of the Pirates. He's wearing a short jacket and trousers, very utilitarian and unfashionable clothing that you might have seen laborers or sailors wearing, but not a captain. On the other hand, despite this plain clothing, his sword now has a very elaborate lion's head pommel on it, and those pistols are slung in a very casual way along the sword's carrying strap. He's holding what appears to be a very short matchlock musket left over from the last century, and it looks like he might have a human scalp hanging from his belt. His enormous beard has been parted into dreadlocks, and he stares out at the reader with wild eyes. Although this might not seem that strange to the modern viewer who's seen a few pirate movies, this was pretty outlandish for the time, and it's drastically different from the way he was portrayed in the same book just 12 years earlier. So this brings us to the big question. Why? Well, I'd say that the answer 300 years ago is the same as it is now. Pirate stories feed our appetite and our imagination. They bring us tales of adventure on the high seas, violence, and exotic locations. The same things that made a general history of the pirates so popular in 1724 have made modern pirate films and video games just as popular today. So, until the next time, this has been Kris Peters for the Hampton History Museum. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again.